Hello and welcome back to anyone and everyone watching. Today, after a short break from it, I'm going to continue my best part-time drivers of 2022 series. But first, thank you to all my new subscribers. We hit 300 a couple days ago, a lot quicker than what I was anticipating, thanks to a lot of support on my recent videos. So again, thank you all very much for joining the channel. Anyway, for those new here, this is my 4th episode of this series. I've previously discussed Kyle Weatherman, Trevor Bayne, and Corey Himes. Go check out those videos if you wish. But now it's time for the driver who, in my opinion, was the second best part-time driver of the 2022 season, Ryan Preece. Unlike most drivers at the top level of NASCAR today, who have gotten to where they are due to their asphalt or dirt late model achievements, Ryan took a rather non-traditional path, spending many years in the Wayland Modified Tour before ever making a start in NASCAR's closed-wheel divisions. I'll admit I know very little about the Modified Tour, as it has always, in my lifetime at least, been separate from mainstream NASCAR. Some former Cup Series winners, such as Ron Bouchard, Brett and Jeff Bodine, Steve Park, and Jimmy Spencer all got their humble beginnings in stock car racing through modifieds. And while a few guys like Corey LaJoie dabbled in modifieds early on in their racing careers, the only active driver today to have made his name solely in the modifieds before going on to compete in the Cup Series is Ryan Preece. After an unremarkable rookie season for his family team all the way back in 2007, Preece saw his first flashes of success in the following 3 years in Jan Buller's number 3 Chevrolet. In 2008, he picked up his first win in the Tour with a dominating performance at Martinsville. Coming in second that day was the 2022 New Smyrna winner Matt Hirschman, and also in the field were the 2022 runner-up and third-place drivers in points, Ron Silk and Eric Goodale. Ryan wasn't the most consistent driver that year, but had learned enough that by 2009, he was able to put together a standout season. With 2 wins, 10 top 5s, and 11 top 10s, Ryan only missed out on the championship by 16 points to Truck Series winner and modified veteran Donnie Leah. Unfortunately, in the next 2 years, Ryan lost all the progress he had made, going winless in 2010, albeit still 6th overall, and in 2011 having to bounce between teams and bring back his family team. After this bad luck spell, Eric Sanderson signed him to his number 16 Ford full-time in 2012, where he practically mirrored his impressive 2009 run before finally winning the championship in 2013 after a 4-win season. Also in 2013, Ryan received his first opportunity in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR as Tommy Baldwin gave him the call to come compete for him the nationwide race in New Hampshire. Baldwin picked this race over any other because at that time, New Hampshire was only one of 2 tracks that both the Modifieds and Closed Wheel series shared on their schedules, the other being Bristol. This meant to Baldwin that Preece had just about as much track experience there, if not more than any other driver he could hire. In his debut, Preece fared respectably, coming home 24th, 4 laps off the pace, ahead of 7 other running cars. The next year, he raced for Baldwin again, but this time added on Homestead in addition to the New Hampshire race. At New Hampshire, he improved considerably, crossing the line in an impressive 14th place, right behind East and West Series champion Dylan Kwasniewski, and a few spots ahead of RCR's Brendan Gaughan and Paul Menard. At Homestead, a track he was brand new to, he could only manage a P28, but at least he was still in the lead lap. In modifieds that year, Preece once again tallied 2 wins and a runner-up in points for Sanderson, but in 2015 he jumped ship to drive Ed Partridge's number 6 Chevy, where in his final full-time modified season he came up 1 spot short of the championship for now the 4th time, but tied his best season in regard to wins with 4. Also that year, Ryan made his debut in the Canadian Pro Series East since his first ever attempt back in 2008 at Iowa resulted in a DNQ. Now driving for Rainier Racing with MDM, he finished 14th in his lone start at Richmond after racing with the likes of William Byron, Kaz Gralla, Noah Gregson, Justin Haley, and that day's winner, Austin Hill. From 2016 to 2017, he entered 3 more races, all with Marsh Racing, where he scored all top 10s with the best finish of 6th at Thompson, another track which he had experience at for modified racing. But more importantly, back in 2015, in the midst of a very successful modified season, he was tapped to drive the Premium Motorsports number 98 machine in the Cup Series New Hampshire race. In his Cup debut, he was well amongst the back markers, but did pretty well all things considered, winding up 4 laps down 32nd, but ahead of 6 other running cars, including a damaged Kyle Busch. In his 4 other starts that year, he failed to better his run in New Hampshire, but besides his NASCAR Heat 5 open lobby style full stint at Martinsville, he kept his nose clean and made it to the finish in every race. Heading into the 2016 season with nothing short of an excellent modified track record, and with recently proving he could handle full-length Xfinity and Cup Series races, Johnny Davis's underfunded and longtime Xfinity team, JTG Motorsports, signed on Preece for the full season. In roughly the first half of his season, his best finish was a respectable 15th, which he earned both at Talladega and Kentucky, but he crashed out 3 times and went behind the wall 3 additional times with mechanical failures. After this slow but expected start to the year for his 0-1 team, he entered the 23rd round at Road America on a bit of a hot streak. First, he survived the rain at Mid-Ohio in only his second ever road course race, finishing an impressive P17, coming in right behind Gibbs Racing's road course ringer Owen Kelly. Then the next week, he once again matched his season best finish of 15th at Bristol. He was 7 laps down, but that's really besides the point, as there were still 30 running cars at the end of the event. So, especially after success at Mid-Ohio, Preece's confidence in his road course abilities had to be a bit higher than they were at the start of the season. In qualifying at Road America, he recorded the 25th quickest time, slightly below his 2016 average, but foreshadowing, the race he was able to take part in would be far from his average in a good way. Following a couple early cautions, including one for his own teammate Garrett Smithley, who wrecked hard on the main straightaway after a part failure, Preece had already worked his way up to a solid 16th in the running order before light showers brought the race to a halt. Luckily, this was no Mid-Ohio repeat as the skies cleared up shortly after and racing resumed as normal. Preece maintained his track position nearly all day, as under a debris caution with 4 to go, he found himself in 15th. But he found a little extra gas in the tank at just the right time, because on the restart, he would move up 3 spots into 12th when a stuck-a-lawn day brought out the day's final caution. At this point, he even caught the attention of the broadcast booth.
Another driver having some success here today, too. He's not known as a road racer, but Ryan Preece, we talked about a lot at Mid-Ohio in the rain, what you had never done. But I was talking to him earlier in the garage area yesterday. He talked about he raced the modified on Wednesday night and won 2 races, had a double feature. He was victorious in both of those. Also said that he got engaged, so a lot of good things happening to this young man. Really good day here for he and his Johnny Davis Motorsports team.
Well, the focus all day was on the underdog Michael McDowell, who drove Richard Childress's number 2 car to victory lane in a one-off race deal after fending off the likes of Brendan Gaughan, Daniel Suarez, and Penske road course ringer Alex Tagliani. On that final overtime restart, Preece crept up even 1 spot better into 11th. And that is where he crossed the line to score his new career best finish in Johnny Davis's signature bright red unsponsored Chevrolet. The next week at Darlington, one of Preece's main sponsors for that season, G&K Services, returned the 0-1 car, this time with a paint scheme inspired by the late Butch Lindley's car of the same number. Lindley won back-to-back championships in the NASCAR Sportsman division back in 1977 and 1978, and went on to win 6 Xfinity races before his fatal 1985 crash. In the race, Ryan smoothly moved up through the field after starting 22nd. The yellow flag only flew 3 times that race, most memorably from this mess. Like the Road America race, Preece ran just shy of 15th all day, but because that final caution flew in the middle of the final green flag pit stops and he had not yet pitted, the 0-1 car lined up in P9 as nearly the entire field was forced to take the wave around. The question, though, was could he keep it there?
Also, the 0-1 of Ryan Preece having a really good run. Those guys, sitting there running 10th, so really good run for these guys as well.
Yeah, Ryan Preece having a very nice run, currently in the 10th position, and they're one of the teams that pitted into the last caution, so they gained some track position on those guys who pitted under green. And in his last 2 races for Ryan Preece, as we see a battle further up front right now.
You saw Ryan Preece wave out the window for the 2 up into the wall. Paul Menard, after it went by Ryan Preece, got up into the wall, so Preece takes the spot back.
You see Ryan Preece, he's got a little bit of a retro paint scheme as well, honoring Butch Lindley, a great short track racer. And really cool going back in time as we see a good battle here.
In the 36th lap green flag run to the finish, Preece slowly dropped back 2 positions into 11th, and it looks like he would mirror his Road America race. But with only a handful of laps to go, Paul Menard suffered a flat tire, handing 1 extra spot to the 0-1. At the finish, it would be Preece's first ever top 10 finish in the series, which would turn out to be the only one for JTG Motorsports all season long. Over the course of his remaining 9 races that season, Ryan only netted 2 more top 20s, a 17th at Chicagoland and an 18th at Dover, but was very consistent, making it to the finish of all of them. When the smoke cleared and Daniel Suarez won that year's championship for Gibbs Racing, Ryan came in 17th in points, sandwiched between his teammates Ross Chastain right ahead of him and Garrett Smithley right behind. All in all, it was a good rookie season for the modified turn Xfinity driver, as he also finished 4th of the Rookie of the Year candidates, only being beaten by JGR's Eric Jones, Chip Ganassi's Brennan Poole, and RCR's Brandon Jones, none of which he had a realistic shot of beating given his equipment. But Ryan was still unsatisfied. He saw the trajectory of his career was heading downwards, always settling for less and fighting for sponsorship with an underfunded team. So he decided to take a risk and bet on himself come 2017. He knew from his modified days that he had winning talent and that it could transfer over into the top levels of NASCAR. In 2016, after racing 8 times in modifieds but coming up winless, he returned with a vengeance in 2017, still piloting Ed Partridge's Chevy. Even with missing 2 races, Preece executed arguably his best season yet with a staggering 5 wins, 12 top 5s, and 12 top 10s in his 14 starts. But that wasn't what earned him his place as a Cup driver in the years to come. Rather, that was due to his Xfinity season that year. The then 26-year-old Preece's only opportunity was pretty much a make or break for his NASCAR career, as he could only string together a 2-race deal with Gibbs Racing to drive their number 18 car. With those kinds of terms for a top team and a struggling driver, it's pretty much assumed by both parties that if you can't win or at least come up a hair short, you can see yourself to the door. Gibbs Racing has plenty of other contacts with drivers that can win. His first race came at his comfort track of New Hampshire, where after starting in 6th, he was able to move up to 4th in the first 30 laps before rain would postpone the race for roughly an hour. Strategy determined the rest of the opening stage, as once the engines were refired, the majority of the leaders hit pit road, while some like Justin Allgaier and Elliott Sadler elected to stay out in pursuit of the stage win. Even of those who came to the pit, some drivers like Keselowski and Larson took only 2 tires, while Kyle Busch and Preece opted for 4. Just hearing some of those names should tell you that this is a pretty stacked race back in one of the final years that bushwhacking was a regular occurrence. It would turn out that the call to pit was the right one, as even in the short sprint to the finish that it was, the 11th and 15th place cars on the restart of Kyle Larson and Ryan Preece quickly charged to the front and came across the line in P1 and P2. When the green flag dropped for the start of the second stage, Preece had the grip to clear Larson to his inside right away, but only led the field for 2 laps before Kyle Busch took it back. Eventually, Keselowski passed both to win the second stage, and Preece slipped back to 4th. The final stage went green the whole way, and the whole time, Preece maintained his ground, never slipping out to the top 5. Then, with a successful green flag pit stop of his own, and taking advantage of Keselowski's pass-through penalty, he came home runner-up to the all-time series wins leader Kyle Busch. Heading into his only other scheduled race at Iowa, Preece had proved he could hang with the big dogs given the right equipment. And now he was one of the favorites because no Cup Series regulars were on the entry list. For those who don't know, Iowa was never on the Cup schedule, so even in prime bushwhacking years, it was one of the few Xfinity races where you could count on a full-time Xfinity driver getting the win. Anyway, Preece could not have kicked off the weekend any better this go-around, as he posted the fastest lap in qualifying and would lead the field to the green. Clearly, his speed did not go away, because in an incident-free first stage, he led every circuit around the 7/8 mile short track. But then, unfortunately, a miserably slow pit stop under the stage caution dropped him back to 6th, which would put his number 20 machine to the test in dirty air for the first time that day. It turned out not to affect the car's overall performance, though. Preece surged up to 2nd with 40 to go on the stage, and bided the rest of his time with the lead car of Justin Allgaier well within his sights. Then, just like the time before, his pit crew couldn't match those of the other leaders, but this time, Preece only fell to 4th. He might as well stay in the front row, because on the restart, he immediately resumed his 2nd place position, and for the next 42 laps, it was the Allgaier and Preece show, with the brand sponsor number 7 ahead the whole way. On lap 170, a change of luck was due for Preece, indirectly given to him by Spencer Gallagher, who had cut a tire and made hard contact with the outside wall, causing the caution to come out. Then, in an absolutely abysmal strategy call and what were they thinking moment, Allgaier's team decided to stay out while every other lead lap car behind him filed into pit road. Even if it happened vice versa, there was still roughly 75 to go at a track where tire grip plays a huge role. Not to mention that by staying out, he'd be short on fuel to the finish, so I'm not sure in what universe he went pit in that situation. Regardless, Preece's crew finally executed when it mattered most and sent him out of pit road where he'd entered. After his main competition that day of Allgaier was swallowed up on the restart, it was smooth sailing for Preece up until a series of late race cautions. It was then that it became apparent that his card faded away a little bit, while others, such as his teammate Kyle Benjamin in the 18 and RCR's Brian Scott, were coming alive. But following an overtime restart with 2 to go, Preece was able to fend off Benjamin in a respectable and textbook battle for the win that saw them cross the line less than a car length apart. And in yet another example of how important a win is in NASCAR, for Preece, that day opened up a door of new opportunities that led him to a feature in the Cup Series, and for Benjamin, those extra few feet prevented him from ever securing a full-time ride over the remainder of his career. While it's not necessarily that cut and dry, one thing is for sure, that Gibbs Racing was confident enough in Preece to add on 2 more races to his 2017 schedule, and bring him back for nearly half the races in 2018. He rounded out 2017 with a P4 at Kentucky and a P5 in the finale at Homestead, keeping up his 100% top 5 streak. However, one incident he may want to forget came during the Homestead race, where he held up championship for contender Elliott Sadler in the final laps, allowing the faster William Byron to catch up and pass both of them en route to that year's title. In my opinion, Preece didn't do anything wrong there. He held his own line, and it wasn't his fault that Sadler couldn't pass him. Also, the eventual contact was caused by Sadler moving up into the 18 car, not the other way around. But no matter what your opinion is on it, it was just an all-around unfortunate situation, especially considering it was Sadler's second runner-up points finish in a row, and the closest he'd ever come to winning it all for the rest of his racing days. In 2018, of course, Preece was unable to keep his top 5 streak alive for all of his 15 races. He even crashed out on 2 occasions. But overall, he continued to prove he belonged in his ride. His only win of the season came at Bristol in his 3rd start, and in much the same fashion as his Iowa win. The dominant car that day was actually the then winless and underperforming Brandon Jones, who, after leading 106 of the 300 total laps, fell victim to a bad 2-tire strategy call during the final round of pit stops. While Jones held on much better than Allgaier in the aforementioned race, still salvaging a P6, it was none other than the second-place car for most of that day, Ryan Preece, who immediately took charge on the restart and pulled away to not only score his second Xfinity win, but also a $100,000 check, as he was one of the race's 4 Dash for Cash eligible drivers. Almost just as impressively, Justin Allgaier rallied back to finish second after going nose first into the inside wall on lap 101. Another driver you can see getting rammed hard into the side of is John Hunter Nemechek, who also came back to finish 13th. But for Preece, he ended his 2018 season with his Bristol win, 7 top 5s, 10 top 10s, and an average finish of 12.3. All the while, he was still racing in the modified tour for Ed Partridge, where that year he won the Stafford and Langley races with 7 top 5s and top 10s in his 11 starts. At that point in his career, Ryan Preece was, in my eyes, really in between having earned a good Cup ride or still being at the Xfinity Series level. Sure, he'd won 2 races in only 19 attempts with JGR, but to justify a full-time Cup ride with a top-level team, he needed to have been lights-out dominant, similar to Ty Gibbs in his 2021 part-time campaign. That being said, I think Preece's 2019 landing spot at JTG Daugherty Racing was well-fitting for him, especially since he didn't do all that great even for their standards in his rookie year. But despite his 4 crashes and a 5.3 place higher average finish than his teammate Chris Buescher, it wasn't all bad. He had a few standout runs, and with 3 total top 10s, was only 1 shy of Buescher. By far his best finish of the season came in the spring Talladega race, where after playing it safe in the back for the majority of the race, he positioned himself just right at the time of the final restart to make an easy route to 3rd place by simply following the inside line. That race was also ended under caution because of this violent final lap crash.
Come Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Ryan Preece. Logano on the outside, and Byron's around. He crashes. Caution is out.
Heavy impact to the inside wall by the 42 of Larson.
Man.
Kyle Larson, Jeffrey Earnhardt with heavy damage, and William Byron.
Man.
On the last lap.
However, I would argue Ryan's most impressive race that season came at Michigan, where after starting 29th and running around 20th all day, he broke into the top 15 with around 25 laps to go. Then, albeit in a fuel mileage finish, the 47 car was able to conserve his fuel better than a lot of the leaders to cross the line in 7th place. Also in 2019, he ran 4 more Xfinity races with Junior Motorsports, all of which he finished inside the top 10 with the best finish of 4th at Pocono. The next year of 2020 was a bit of a bad one for everyone, to say the least, but for Ryan, it was additionally bad because of a step back in performance. Now driving the 37 car after JTG Daugherty and Roush swapped drivers Chris Buescher and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he settled for only 2 top 10s, a 10th at Talladega, and an honestly really remarkable 9th in the Bristol night race. His great Bristol run was heavily overshadowed by the intense battle for the win all throughout the final 82-lap green flag run between the eventual winner Kevin Harvick and the still winless and championship hangover-suffering Kyle Busch. So while his highlights were few and far between, his lowlights were certainly not, as he racked up 5 DNFs due to crashes and 8 total, including 4 in a row at one point. And with Stenhouse's 7 crashes tacked onto the team total, the already struggling JTG Daugherty team was not looking so hot heading into 2021. In fact, over that offseason, JTG was unable to renew the lease for their 37-car charter, meaning that Ryan would have to race as an open team, subject to go home any week if he didn't lock himself in on speed and qualifying. And that was even if he could organize a full season attempt, because he was also reportedly lacking sponsorship for 12 races as late as February. But in the face of all that adversity, Preece not only found enough sponsorship to cover all 36 races on the Cup schedule, not only qualified for them all, but was able to put together his best statistical season yet, with 1 top 5, 4 top 10s, and an average finish of 22.8. He started out the year on a high note with a P6 in the Daytona 500, well, with considerable damage from the last lap big one, but I'll look past that. Followed up with a P9 in the Daytona road course race, the first time we saw a glimpse of his road course talent since his early Xfinity days. As far as which race was his best of 2021, I would point to both the Coke Zero 400 at Daytona and the second race of the Pocono doubleheader. Both of his finishes in those races are open to criticism, though. Of course, there's the typical superspeedway argument for Daytona, but unlike his only other Cup Series top 5 back in 2019 at Talladega, this time Preece was in the thick of things all race along, never playing it safe in the back and still avoiding all the late race carnage en route to a 4th place. Then, even though the end of the Pocono race was filled with fuel strategy, Preece had been running top 15 for most of the final stage and managed his fuel a lot better than most of the leaders to come home in 8th. But despite the upward trend in his results, the writing was already clearly on the wall the year prior that JTG was no longer able to afford a 2-car operation. Also, his 5 DNFs due to crashes sure didn't help cut any team costs. So around halfway through 2021, it was announced that JTG would be downsizing back to a single car for 2022 and would be releasing Preece at season's end. Unfortunately for Preece, he had no other Cup ride waiting for him, and just like that, he was back in the same spot he was during the 2016 to 2017 offseason. Or so it may have seemed. By then, Tony Stewart recognized his talent and made sure he was not going to slip away, and although there was no direct Cup or even Xfinity to ride available with his team for 2022, there were still a few smaller teams with partial SHR alliances, or very low-budget teams willing to accept any help they can get. Anyway, Stewart and Preece worked together the best deal they could for the upcoming season, eventually settling on 2 races with the Brickware Racing and Cup, 3 with BJ McLeod Motorsports and Xfinity, in addition to being granted SHR reserve driver status. Then, in the Truck Series, he would continue on his relationship with David Gilliland Racing to run a planned 7-race schedule. While racing for DGR twice in 2021, Ryan actually won in his first attempt with them, and in his truck debut for that matter, at the Nashville race. After qualifying 6th and running around that spot in both the first and second stages, his number 17 Hunt Brothers pizza truck came alive late in the going and tracked down the leader Grant Enfinger over the course of the final green flag run. Preece was able to fight past him with only a handful of laps to go to cross the line first and deliver DGR their second ever team victory. More importantly for Preece's sake as a driver, he proved he hasn't lost his winning touch in NASCAR, as it hadn't been since the spring Bristol Xfinity race back in 2018 that he last hoisted the trophy. Well, in the top 3 divisions at least, because he also picked up 3 modified tour wins in the 2021 season. This past year in 2022 saw mixed results for Preece in his Cup and Xfinity starts. Starting with his 2 races for the Brickware Racing team, he did about as good as he could have been expected to at Dover, qualifying ahead turning 13th and keeping up top 20 speed for a good portion of their race before fading back to finish in 25th, 2 laps off the pace. But then the Coke 600 got loose all by himself on only lap 18, but a quick end to what otherwise would have been the longest race of the season. In Xfinity, he fared better overall in his Stewart-Haas Racing prepared number 5 car, as after an underwhelming 16th at Richmond, he rallied back for a P5 at Charlotte and a P6 at Nashville. Far and wide, though, Preece's biggest accomplishments in 2022 came in his truck races. Even though he only made 10 stars, I'd have to say he displayed some of his best consistency ever, as the only time Preece came home outside the top 10 was at Charlotte, where he finished 11th. And with a staggering average finish of 4.6, which is 3.1 positions lower than the champion Zane Smith, he was able to rank ahead of 7 full-time drivers in the final standings, despite running less than half the schedule. But by far the highlight of his 2022 season was his lone win that came once again at Nashville, and this time in much more dominant fashion. As from the pole, he led the most laps of any driver with 74 of the 150 total. All the while, he was never able to take it easy out front and race by himself, because unlike the 2021 event, in 2022 it was a complete caution fest, with the longest green flag run being only 23 laps. Nevertheless, Preece held off a hard-charging Zane Smith to the line in a final 10-lap sprint to claim his second career Truck Series win. And now, thanks to both his success in the lower series and Nicole Cuzzer's underperformance in the Cup Series, as you all know by now, Ryan will be back in the Cup Series competing full-time for Stewart-Haas Racing themselves in the number 41 car. I can't wait to see how they do. I'm not too confident that a win or a playoff appearance is in store for them in their first season together, especially given Preece's lack of experience in the next-gen car, but both could very well happen. By now, I believe he's absolutely earned his spot in a top Cup Series team by having put together 3 decent years with a struggling JTG Daugherty team, and proving on multiple occasions in the Xfinity and Truck Series that he will win when he's behind the wheel of winning equipment. In the years to come, I don't think he'll amount to a Hall of Fame career, as he's already 32 years old, but I have faith he'll pick up around 5 to 10 wins by the time it's all said and done. But no matter how it pans out from here moving forward, Ryan Preece will always be respected as one of the sport's most successful journeyman drivers, and serve as a glimmer of hope to any drivers in the modified divisions that want to make it to the top ranks of NASCAR. And that concludes my second to last episode of my Best Part-Time Drivers of 2022 series. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss out on the final episode of this series or on any of my weekly silly season news recaps. And thank you all again for the recent support on the channel. We're growing like crazy at this point. Only about a week ago, I just hit like 100, 200 subscribers, and now we're pushing about 400 with thousands of views coming in every day. But anyway, that's all I've got to say, so until next time, peace out.